Hi Grinder School, this is Uboat, and on this video I have a hand history of a session that I played this morning where I had a very loose aggressive player at my table. I was going to try to go through, comb through my hand histories on my poker tracker, but fortunately one aggressive monkey sat at my table this morning to give you guys a good idea of how they play at these stakes. I know this is going to be a video on 2 PLO, but these type of players will play the same way all the time at low as 2 PLO and as high as 100 PLO. Most of the times you will see loose passive and tight passive players at these stakes. You may win some pots off them, but when you face loose aggressive monkeys, you will win many stacks many times over. So if you ever have position on these aggressive monkeys, never leave and play your strong starting hands. And you should get your larger winnings from these type of players. So now I'll just go over this table that I was at. I played, I think, about maybe an hour-half session, and it was pretty slow. And as you can see, to my left is a very loose passive player, a tight passive at the big blind, and we have another kind of a loose passive at under the gun, and we have our main target, right? Well, we have three targets, but he was my main target. At middle position, we had this Sir 3107, whatever 1990. He was looking at every single hand after 41 hands. He's raising preflop 80. His aggressiveness was not that high, but as you'll see, there's a couple of interesting hands. And to my right is a decent player. His stats are not bad. So we will go through the hand that I marked, and we'll kind of go over and see what kind of player this Sir. We'll call him Sir. Okay. So the undergun limps, and like any aggressive player, he raises. And I know it's not raising for value. He's just probably trying to fold everyone out. So he folds the regular stat player out. He folds me out. And likewise, the loose passive in the small blind calls when he shouldn't, especially when they have marginal or speculative hand. And the tight passive folds as expected. And the other loose passive calls, and what a surprise there. So we see the flop, it's super wet. I mean, 565 monochrome is like what as you can get. It definitely hits the range of all these players. So let's see what happens. So like the typical loose passives, these two players at the small blind and under the gun folds. And Sir, sorry, not folds, checks, and Sir checks back too, which I mean, this was early in the hand, so I guess it wasn't too much of a surprise because I was assuming that he was loose passive also. And then now on the turn, let's see what happens. The small blind checks back as expected, and under the gun checks back too, and this is where it gets interesting. Sir bets, about less than half pot on a monochrome wet board. And he folds out the small blind, and he gets a caller from under the gun. And like on this one in the beginning, I guess I had no idea who was ahead. I thought maybe Sir maybe had two pairs, and maybe the guy from under the gun had a made flush, then definitely a non-nutted flush. And then it even gets worse on the river. And he under the gun checks back, and Sir checks back. And it was really, and at these points, really important to note the type of hand they had at showdown. So the loose passive player, he had a set on a very wet board and a gutter too, and he didn't lead out. And whereas this guy, he had the nuts straight. And he did lead out on the turn, and I guess he thought he was ahead and took the pot. So nothing too bad, but definitely, he's being a little bit more aggressive, especially on the monochrome board. When these two players check back, and he took the aggressive approach, and rightly so, but kind of shows an idea how aggressive he can be. Although the stats show otherwise, that's definitely an aggressive play, especially multi-way and bidding out on such a. I mean, he did have the nut straight, but there's a mate flush on the board. Okay, so next hand, we still have the same players. So let's see what happens. The loose passive limps. What a surprise! And naturally, this guy, is starting to show signs of aggression by raising. And I'm not sure if, and I really doubt he was raising for value here. Just raising for the hell of it, I think. And nothing too scary about this flop. Semi-wet, but not too scary. So he leads out, full pot, and he folds the loose passive out. So definitely another aggressive move, especially leading out on the flop, and which doesn't really show on the stats. So you have to always be careful about that. Don't always depend on stats. I think the most important stats maybe the VPIP and PFR, and the other stats, and once you get like tons of hands on them, say maybe a couple hundred hands, it does get important, especially at the higher limits. But at the micro limits, especially against these loose aggressive and loose passive, it's very important to see how they play post flop and what kind of hands that they have at showdown. Okay, and right now, although it shows, three aggressive. I mean, he's betting. He's continuing. I mean, he's no, it's not very. He seems very passive, but he's showing some aggression right now, and we do have to take note of that when we're playing. And here, I do have okay hands. I mean, with a table full of three fish and I'll have position on this guy, it's not bad to open from under the gun. Usually I would fold that hand, but against these kind of players at this table, I think I would open for sure with 3x, expecting all these passive players to call, and I was expecting him to re-raise, and he just called back. And what we have is we have. It's not a great card for us. I mean, we do have a flush shove, but it's nothing to the nuts, and we are out of position, so I'll definitely check back on this flop here. So we check back, and he bets full pot, and he's a tight passive player, and I'm gonna fold this. He's betting almost what 4/5 of the pot, and the aggressive guy calls, and we fold. And we have to think that maybe he got trips. I would have to say trips, or maybe a straight. I mean, maybe a what is it? A boat, but I think more of trips. Maybe he had 3xxx or something like that. And him, he could be calling with anything. He's probably waiting to see what he does, and let's see what happens. So he checks. And he checks back and he shows weakness. And if he's a true aggressive player, he's going to bet out on the river. And that's what I was watching for. And I mean, it's a tight passive player, and he checked back. And he's a guy that could fold his trips of 3xx. So he leads out, knowing that he showed weakness on the turn, but I don't think that ace was a good card to bluff on, because if he had any ace, I don't think this guy would have folded, which he does. So definitely showing some aggression and kind of, no, I don't think positionally aware, but knowing when to lead out. So something that I was taking note of, and I didn't want to open up with marginal hands against him, because since he's going to be re-raising me, if I was say under the gun early position and I open 3x, I'm always expecting a player like this to re-raise me pre-flop, and we want to keep our starting hands fairly strong. We don't want to open any marginal hands at early position, and even if I was at the button, if I raise 3x, I always have to be aware that he's going to re-raise me, he's going to 3-bet me, but we would have position on him, and that's a little bit of comfort, but against these kind of players, we do want to have tighter range here, okay? We don't want to loosen our range. Definitely not, because we want to have the nuts against these players because we have the opportunity to get many stacks from these type of players, okay? So something to take note of. Okay, so now we have pretty junky hands, and I think this is a hand that I definitely folded, but remember, I'm showing these hands to show you the type of aggression that these players will show and how he's going to play against other players, which you have to take note of. And if you don't, you're going to be losing a lot of money because you're going to be making some incorrect folds, and you're not going to be in a pot where you should be, where you know that you should be ahead. So we get these limpers, and not surprising, and he re-raises. See, right here after, what was that, 4 or 5 hands, he definitely showed pre-flop aggression and post-flop aggression. And remember, the stats doesn't always show that, so you have to take note of this. And I started putting this note thing. I don't think I took notes on it, did I? No. But I did add this note so that on the future when I'm playing these sessions, and when I'm going over these hand histories, that I'll have these notes on them to show you guys the type of notes I have. And definitely I put like, re-raises pre-flop, shows pre-flop aggression, and also he leads out whenever a player shows weakness post-flop. So definitely sign of aggression that doesn't show up on your HUD. So likewise, not very surprising that the loose passive players call this aggressive player's raise. We have a very dry flop here, and like good little loose passive players, they check back, and it's giving this guy an opportunity to bet full pot. I mean, that's going to scare these guys off. I bet even if they had 2 pairs, they would probably fold that. Maybe they may call, but geez, some of these passive players, or any calls, and he could have 2 pairs, and this guy could have anything. I think definitely this guy, maybe 2 pairs. I doubt a set. And if he had a set, even if it was a loose passive player, he would definitely show aggression by re-raising full pot. But he's calling, so I'm putting him on. Maybe he caught a king, maybe 2 sets, maybe 2 pairs like king 2 or 9 deuce. And this guy, I don't know, he can have anything. So he can have 9xxx, even 2xxx, you never know. So let's see the turn. The turn doesn't really change too much. I mean, a 3 really doesn't change much. And he checks back again, showing definite weakness. But we don't know, because remember, he could have top 2 pair, and he could be crushing this guy's range. He might have nothing. And remember, these loose passive players, when they're not, even when they have the boat, they'll play passively sometimes. And like our typical aggressive monkey, he bets close to full pot. And he re-raises, and when he re-raises, he's got something. I really think he really has 2 pairs. And maybe a set, but maybe 2 pairs. I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure if it's the nuts, but he would have 2 pairs for sure. Just forget what he had. And they're all in. So let's see. So he had 2 pair for sure. So, not the best 2 pairs. I mean, it kind of shows you how bad these players are. He's willing to stack off with king 3. I mean, it's better to call off. I really doubt this player had any reads on the Sir guy. And he's just, looking at his cards, he's probably going, wow, I have king 3, 2 pairs. Okay, I'm going to, put all my stacks in. And definitely take note of that on that player. And let's see what our Sir had. And he had bottom 2 pairs on the flop, and likewise, he's not going to fold that. So definitely take note of that. So what I would have done was on the flop, he bets, and he barrels a turn, and calls any re-raise with bottom 2 pair. And you know what? Bottom 2, yeah, no reason to call that. They just play their hand horribly, but very good to take note, and very good for us, because we'll have a chance to play position against him. And as you can see on my stack, at these 2 PLOs and 5 PLO, I'm always deep stack, so that I have the opportunity to take any other deep stacks when fish, say these Argo fish have deep stacks, like, sometimes you'll see these loose aggressive fish accumulating, say, 10, 20, buy-in stacks, and you want to be as full stacked as you can against these loose passive and loose aggressive players, and today against these loose aggressive players. So again, they're going all in with two pairs when they shouldn't. They should be playing that passively. So let's go to the next hand. Next hand, I'm still dealt, very junky hands. And I was dealt junky hands on, I think, even a couple other tables too. And remember, I saw a blog earlier today at Grinder School, and we had a member who kind of, I think he was getting dealt trashy cards. And he was in position and he thought he could open junky cards just as this, and you can't. When you're dealt trashy and junky hands, you guys stick with your strong starting hands, and you don't want to deviate from that. And having trashy hands and impatience is no excuse to loosen up your range. Okay, especially when you have, even against these loose passive and loose aggressive fish. You don't want to loosen up that much. We want to crush their range, okay, or be slightly ahead. And this range, this hand, is nothing. It's just pure junk. So let's see what happens on this hand. So everyone folds. So we get this. Okay, now we have a new player. Okay, so this guy, he's. I think he was playing a lot of hands against our sir. And I think he was kind of a Regis player, but he's trying to play against this guy a lot. And we'll see something. Actually, it was pretty interesting to watch. He was doing his best, but it's not very good. So we'll see why. So, like our dependable aggressive monkey, he raises this guy out of position. And another thing to note is when 3-betting out of position, it's almost a marginal play, even with aces. I mean, if you have ace, ace, king, queen, double suited, yeah, by all means you raise it. Or if you have a nice round up, all means raise it. But even with those hands, when you 3-bet out of position, it's always so difficult to play post-flop. So just be aware of that. And this guy doesn't care. And look at his, and this is his, here, what is that thing going over it? Okay, you know what? I'll open it up. When you look at his pre-flop, when you look at his, whoa, why isn't this working? When you look at his 3-bet by position, look at that, 10 out of 16. I mean, at middle position, he 3-bets 2 out of 3. At the cutoff, 1 out of 2. At the button, 4 out of 5. At small blind, 1 out of 3. And at big blind, 2 out of 3. He's very aggressive pre-flop monkey right here. So we can always depend on them to 3-bet almost any player. And he calls. So if he calls, he does have regular stats. I mean, it's a little bit loose aggressive, but after all, he was trying to play as many hands against this guy. So, maybe a rundown with that player. Definitely not aces. I think he would have 4-bet the sir guy. So we have a very wet flop. And let's see what happens. So our aggressive monkey checks back, which is, he's tricky, I mean, I could see a guy like that, ace XXX, checking back, and it shows you, his continuation on the flop. It's only 48%, so very difficult to know, where he's at. And remember, checking back in PLO, it doesn't necessarily mean weakness. I mean, it could mean, you could get check raised. That's what I would be scared of. And the reason why I say this guy is a joke, kind of, she's trying to play like a regular guy, but he's a joke. I mean, he checked back, and why would he fold on the flop? I mean, that's definitely, I took note of that, and that's definitely a very fishy move. I mean, at least he could see the turn. I mean, what would, he must have had pure junk. So it kind of shows what kind of player he is. So always take note of that, okay? Oh, and by the way, this guy, to my right, although he's 3-14, you have to watch his stack. He's a short stacker, 72 cents. He's not fully stacked. So although his stats seem decent, he's probably a guy who's on the verge of busting his roll. And his stats kind of show that he's okay, but I mean, look at that. He's busting his roll. If you do have a chance to stack a guy like this, I'd just go for it. If I have like ace, king, I don't know, X, I'd try to 3-bet him and just get his stack in. But let's go on to this hand. So we have another junky hand at the big blind, and like good, and he and this guy re-raises, and I don't think he's raising for value. I think these are like no limit players transitioning over to pot limit Omaha. I think he's trying to isolate it. And in pot limit Omaha, you just don't want to ISO raise for the sake of ISO raising as you can at no limit hold'em. In pot limit Omaha, when you raise, you're raising for value, and you don't want to bluff when you raise for value. I mean, raise any limper, okay? Because these limpers will never fold their hand. They're going to call post flop. And I love this guy. Like this, like a dependable, aggressive monkey. He 3-bets this guy. So let's see what happens. And he's gonna fold that. Yeah, if he called, I'm sure he would have called, but he's gonna fold it. And now our sir is gonna force this guy to call. Let's see what happens. So he calls, and I don't think he's got any ace hand because he's just calling, and we get a very dry flop. And I think it's our sir's range more than this guy's range, but let's see what happens. So he checks back, and after his continuation on the flop is 54%, so it's not that bad. I mean, in pot limit Omaha, you want your bet on the flop to be between 45 to 75. You don't want to be too low, and you don't want to be too high. I mean, it's not like in no limit where when you bet the flop, you're going to take the flop down. I mean, most people are going to call. I mean, unless you have a really good read, that's when you can bet the flop to take the pot down. But you don't want to have stats that's too high. Like this guy's 100, and mine is 75. It's probably on the upper range of what your continuation bet should be on the flop. So I mean, but let's go with this hand. Let's see the turn. So he bets close to flop. I mean, goes close to pot. And let's see what this other guy does. And he folds. So see, aggression. He knows that this guy is trying to play as many hands against him, and he's probably, and he knows, and this guy, I think he can kind of read the board, and he knows that this flop didn't hit his range, so he bets. Well, I don't know if he can read the board or not, or playing on a second level, but that's pretty good. This was kind of fun to watch, and he's a fit or fold player, okay? And we gotta watch players like this, because these kind of guys, when they try to play as many hands as they can against loose, aggressive players, they're going to make some severe mistakes, and we want to try to take advantage of that if we can have any heads-up hands against them, but probably unlikely because he's across the table. So let's move on to the next hand. So again, we're in the small blind. See, we're getting the junky hands, and there's no way I'm going to play that hand, even if I have these table full of fish. Okay, all of them are fish. For me, there's no decent players here. So let's, they limp. This guy raises, and I know that he's not raising for value. He's just trying to ISO raise the limper, which is really incorrect in pot limit Omaha on this spot, because he's still in early position. You try to avoid any 3-bets or ISO raise at early position, at middle position, because you still have so many players to act in front of you. So why raise? I mean, if you think you have a hand that's playable, if he limps in your early position and you don't have like aces, king, queen, you can call a limp. It's perfectly fine, and see what they do. Oh, gee, I love this guy. The sir re-raises him again. And we fold our hand. And you know what? He's on tilt. That's tilt right here. I really doubt he has aces. He's on full tilt. And he re-raises him again, like our dependable aggressive player. And he calls. Yeah, this guy is on pure tilt. I mean, most regulars, unless they have aces with decent sidecars, no one's going to go all in preflop. And pot limit Omaha, you don't want to go in preflop. Even if you have aces and you think you have 60, 65%, I mean, the nuts change so much on the flop, turn, and the river. It's not like no limit where you know you're going to be ahead when you know you're going to win it majority of the time. It's not like that in pot limit Omaha. So if you can, try to avoid these kind of spots. Try to avoid going all in pre-flop, okay? So let's see what happens. So the flop is super, you know, super super wet. There's so many made straights out there, sets, pairs, basically straight. And you know what? This is a nice rundown. 8675, but it's not a hand that you want to go all in pre-flop. Because the reason is there's nothing nutty about it. You're not gonna get the nut straight. You're not gonna flop the nut flush. There's nothing nutty about this. So this was a hand when you three bet him. When you re-raised in pre-flop to what was it, 32 cents versus 9 cents, he should have just called and seen the flop, and he could have saved his stack right there, but he tilted. And he probably said, well, I got a rundown, so I'm going to push my stack in, which was a big mistake because there's nothing nutty about that. Because remember, we're playing against a loose aggressive player who's going to keep re-raising pot, and there's nothing nutty about this hand. So that's a big mistake on that part. So definitely take note of that he tilts. I think when you see someone who tilts, he's going to become a huge target also, because when you know that he's going to reload, we can get more stacks off him. Okay, and let's see what the loose aggressive had. Yeah, and he had a straight. Good for him. Well, good for. I like that because I want the loose aggressive player to win many stacks against this guy. So since we have better position against loose aggressive, we can play maybe a hand or two against him, which you will see soon. And look, I'm at the end. You know what? Going back to sticking with our solid game, I have a really trashy hand. 5-3 king queen. I'm at and I have position, but so what? This is just pure trash. Even if there's these loose passive, loose aggressive, or these tight passive players, I'm not going to play a hand with these guys, even if I have position, because who's going? If you were playing maybe 100 PLO and we know that we're playing against decent regs, maybe we might be able to bluff them off the pot. But at these micro stakes, that's not going to happen. So if you think you can play position against loose passive and win with trashy hands, I really doubt it. So forget about it. Stick to your strong starting hands and have lots of patience. So let's see how this hand unfolds. So we get this tilting, and this was sweet. He rebuys like 250 BB after he loses that previous stack to our sir, and he's really tilting. And he raises under the gun, and I really think he's starting to open with really trashy hands. And beautiful, our sir 3-bets him again. So let's see what happens. So at least he called this time. He didn't 4-bet him. And we got kind of a dry flop, nothing too dangerous. And he checks back, and I really don't think he really has anything. And like a dependable aggressive player, he bets flop, and he re-raises all in. And when he re-raises all in, I think he's still on tilt. So let's see what happens. And he calls, and he goes all in again. He's definitely on tilt. I really don't think. What hand connected? Like a straight draw? Maybe he's got 9-10 XX? I don't know. Maybe he got 8x. I really think he's on tilt, and he's just spewing off his stack to our Mr. Aggressive Fish, the Sir. So our monkey calls. Let's see what he had. See, he was on total tilt. On the flop, he basically had nothing. Nothing. And yeah, no, he was on total tilt here. So good to take note of. And too bad we weren't playing against him on that end. Jeez. And this guy, he had top pair. He's not going to fold. He's an aggressive monkey. And on the turn here, there's no way this guy's gonna fold when he knows that he's got the nut straight and top pair. This type of player will not fold. So good to take note of that, and good to take note of this type of player too. He's in the beginning when you play hands with these type of players, they may seem like a regular, and you may have notes on them as a regular, but see how they play against these Argo guys. Even you can test them by 3-betting off, and then see if they have tilting tendencies, which is really important, just as good as playing against these aggressive fish. Like I love playing against players who tilt. So he left. He probably lost his bankroll. So now we finally have a semi-decent hand. Although we are in middle position, we know that we're going to have position against this aggressive fish, right? And we do have a chance for the nut flush and the nut straight, and we do have it's double suited to the ace and to the king, and it's a decent hand to play against these kind of fish. So I'll definitely open 3x. And I was hoping he would 3-bet, and I would have definitely called. And the reason why I was hoping that he would 3-bet is because look at his tendencies. He was 3-betting that hey guy like how many times? Like so many times. And I was hoping he would 3-bet, then we could call it, so that if we hit it, we have a bloated pot. And that's what we want against these loose aggressive players. And he's very deep stacked. He's what, close to 600 BBs, and we have 250 BBs. Really good chance to increase our stacks. And we flop not too bad. We flop top pair and a gutter. And I'm not going to slow down against this guy because he can be fine with anything, any trashy hand. So what I do is when he checks, I'm going to bet, 8. Because the reason why I bet small is, he did have a tendency to re-raise. And if he re-raised me, I'm definitely going to call him, but I don't want him to. If I bet pot, it's going to be just so big that I might have to fold. So if I bet small here against this guy, I can still call, and we can hit the straight on the turn. And he folds. So that was kind of interesting. So because we haven't played too many hands together, maybe he made a fold. So that was a little bit surprising for me, because I was expecting him to check raise me there on the flop. Okay, this is kind of interesting. This 7-8 ace 7 hand. Normally I'll fold this at the small blind, but if he raise, I'll definitely call, because here's the reason. We have a chance for the nut flush, and the 7s does nothing for us. Okay, but the 7-8 is kind of connected, and we have a chance to flop a straight. So that's the reason why I want to play, even though we're out of position against this guy, because although we are out of position, I think we can outplay this guy post flop. And you never know. Even if we flop the set, I wouldn't play aggressively, but we can definitely, get in the passive mode to get some chips off him. So let's see what I'm like a reliable aggressive player. He's raising from the button, and we're not afraid of that pot open raise. So we're gonna call from the small blind. I was hoping he would call, but he didn't. And you know what? Against these aggressive players, when they flop top pair, and I have a backdoor straight draw with a 5-6. I'm not thrilled, but it's not a bad flop for us. It's definitely a flop that we're gonna lead out for sure, or call any C bets. And I don't know why I didn't lead out here. Let me check back. Well, I guess maybe I was expecting him to bet the flop, but remember, he has tendency to make a continuation bet on the flop. It's 48%. But remember, with other players, when other players check back, he did have a tendency to bet in position, and that's what I thought, and he didn't do that, which kind of surprised me. And with the 9, I think this one, I figured, I don't know why he was playing passive, so I think I made a bet. Yeah, I made a bet. And I made a bet small, and I wasn't planning on folding it because I was expecting him to re-raise me here, and he did, and I called him. And here, he could have anything, but the thing I was afraid was he could have trips. He could have 9xx, or he could even have maybe ace 4. So, you know, right here, I was on the borderline of what's going to happen on the turn. Like, I was willing to check fold the turn if he bet, and I was hoping to just see a cheap showdown, but we get the boat. Although we don't have the nut boat, the nutty boat, the nuts being ace-ace, having the nuts, against these Argo players, now we're going to bet close to full pot on these. So I bet close to full pot, and he didn't re-raise me, so and we know that he didn't have the nuts, but I'm kind of surprised. I don't know why he's playing so cautious against me. And he had the trips, and we had the boat. So that was kind of nice. So we had, we won a stack and a half from him on that hand. So let's go to the next hand. Awesome hand, and he's back, fully stacked. So that was interesting. I was hoping that he'd be playing this pot, and you know what? This is a hand that I'm gonna go bonkers against this player, and we do have position against him. So he min raises, which is really odd because he always, open raise pre-flop pot for 7 cents. So that was odd. So, and our very loose passive players to our right called, and definitely we can't slow play this one against these kind of players. We don't want them to have any advances, so we want to re-raise full pot, and hopefully we get all these other players calling, and we get the aggressive players calling, and we get and we're going to play a very big pot right now. And we hit the world right here. We hit the nut flush and top set, and the thing is, we never want to check back. The reason being is we are in position, and we got the nuts. I mean, say we bet maybe 2/3 pot here. That's what I was planning on doing. And even if they check and we bet 2/3 pot and they fold, well, we gotta take, at least we got the pot. But we never want to slow play, even when we have the nuts. A jack could come up here, and well, not jack, maybe a 5 come up here, and someone could have 5/5xx for the quad. So we never want to slow play in pot limit Omaha. Okay, if it was a very dry flop, say it was like ace 9 or ace 8 deuce monochrome, and we had top set, then we have a reason to slow play. But in pot limit Omaha, it's very rare that you want to slow play this, especially at the micro stakes. So our aggressive sir checks back, and our loose passive checks back, which is not a surprise there. And we bet about just over 2/3 pot, and we get called by the aggressive. And I knew that this guy wasn't planning on folding, and it's too bad that he folded. We could have got a stack. And I'm not slowing down here. There's no reason to slow down. We still have top set, flush draw. There's no completed, there's no mate straight here, so nothing to be afraid of. So we got to bet close to pot. And the reason why I'm betting close to pot is I know that he's going to call. Against these aggressive, loose aggressive players, you don't want to bet small. Okay, you're just losing value. You want to bet big as you can. I mean, I don't see any reason why you can't bet pot, but $1.36 doesn't look as threatening as full pot. So he calls. And here, although there is a mate straight with say 2, 4, or 4, 7, I really don't think he has anything. We're gonna bet our stack, get our stack soon. And he checks back here, and especially when he checks back, I think if he had something, he would probably lead out, which he did on previous hand, and he didn't. So that's why I'm not afraid of any mate straight. And we bet full pot, and he calls. And let's see what he had. And he did have a set on the turn, and he was playing passively. I guess he was playing passive because I was betting pot, and I don't know if he was making a read, but A bit surprising. I'm surprised what he didn't re-raise on the turn here. And you know what? I think he was just trying to make his flush here too. So flush of the boat, and any boat would have got us. But and you know another good reason why we shouldn't slow play, because see, we can get full value from these kind of players, and we win a 600 big blind pot, and we're up 300 BBs. So that's a very good reason why when we have position on these players, we want to, we don't want to lead the player. I mean, we don't want to lead the table. We want to see as many hands as we can until we get some really strong hands where we can get some big stacks against these kind of players. Okay, so I think I have a couple more hands still ready. So we have these donkeys players here. It's not a hand that I want to play with these guys, so fold. So the button raises. Remember, this is a very tight passive player. So when he raises, I'm looking at, his pre-flop raise was 3, so I'm looking at ace XX right here. But let's see. So he re-raises him, which is probably a mistake. And he calls, and I don't think he has ace this time. And he bets. And you erase, you know what? Jack, Jack, XX. He's got the boat. He goes all, and see, he goes all in. And we'll just speed this up in him. He basically had nothing, as you can see, like nothing on that flops, and then he had the boat. And that's the end of this hand history review. So I hope it gave you a good idea of how to approach these loose aggressive players, like, how to watch, what to watch out for. It's not always the stats. Don't depend on your HUDs, and that's a horrible mistake. And at Grind School, you see in many of the hand histories and the cash history forums, where the first thing the players does is they say, well, this guy has something VPAIP or PFR or 3-bet, and some kind of aggression level. But look at this guy. His pre-flop aggression factor is 3, his turn aggression factor is 1, his river aggression factor is 1. But we know how aggressive he plays pre-flop, post-flop, and also post-flop. So always look out for those pre-flop and post-flop signs of aggression and take good notes. And remember, you don't want to play marginal hands against these loose aggressive players. You just want to play very strong starting hands, as you saw on this hand history review. And I hope you took something from this video of playing against the loose aggressive players. And I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.